Of Detonation. Look, we have a candidate profile here today. It's Christian T. Harris. Hello, Christian. Nice to see you all the way from the United States.
How you doing? Yeah, the United States is a wonderful country, the land of the free and the home of the brave. So it's actually Kristan, by the way. It's all right. A lot of people have called me Christian in my life, so don't worry about it.
Kristan, sorry about that. Yeah, I should have asked you before we went on. Anyway, so what made you do this crazy thing where you want to throw your hat into the USTP ring? It's a bit of a funny party. It's a bit of a funny thing to do.
You know, it's rather interesting. I think that although it's very different from a lot of other political parties, since it's scientific based, primarily, the ideas that are behind it are very important, and there's not a lot of people being part of this debate right now, or even have the ability to understand a large amount of the things that we are going to be talking about. And I think that that's one of the areas that I'll be able to help bridge and help, kind of bring different viewpoints together and bring awareness to transhumanism, because I believe that there's a very different ideas of what transhumanism is between conservatives or liberals or different political parties. Not that a political party matters at all, because it's usually the issues that matter to individuals. Like me, I've always grown up fiscally conservative. If you don't have the money, don't spend it, versus socially liberal. I don't believe that victimless crime should be really pursued. I think that a lot of social issues, I think people should be able to do whatever they want as long as they don't violate my own personal individual liberties or freedoms. That's what it really comes down to. And conservatives have this idea of transhumanism, that it's this radical idea and very unethical, as where I think a lot of progressives may view transhumanism as a great opportunity, which it is, by the way, but kind of don't really pay attention to the ethical aspects, as where conservatives, they don't really care about the technological aspect as much of it, but that's because no one has introduced it in a way that would make sense to them. I think that nowadays with transhumanism, you see a lot of people selling a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of great things around transhumanism, but to say, hey, you can live forever, right now that technology is not available. I want to talk about things we can impact today and really reel it in a little bit, like things like your Fourth Amendment right to privacy. Nowadays, they have cloaking technology that legitimately would make data collection almost impossible by giant corporations. Companies like Spectrum Internet or AT&T, they have the ability to purchase cloaking software that would prevent this and prevent, this big brother type culture that we've learned to really accept.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So your slogan, that really ties in with your slogan, which is freedom, live through technology. Do you want to expand on that? This is a sort of libertarian-esque thing. A lot of people associate technology with a sort of dystopian future of less freedom, Orwellian type ideas. What's this idea of live free through technology?
Well, there's a lot of great things that technology has the opportunity to bring to the table. And a lot of times it's overlooked by our goals and the what if game of what's going to happen down the line. But we can definitely improve our lives and become less reliant on government through technology. For example, if we gave businesses who were innovative on robotics and automation in the medical industry huge tax breaks for developing, let's say, free clinics that are mostly automated by robots, it would help alleviate a lot of the costs to the taxpayer on things like Medicaid and Medicare, as well as maybe even get patients better coverage and better results as far as getting in to see the doctor and diagnosing things. It's a very interesting when we talk about artificial intelligence and its ability to diagnose you for your illness, and not only that, be able to, in the near future, calculate how to concoct a cure for just about any disease. So there's different ways that transhumanism can affect us to live free, even things like dependency on centralized currency, which I think, obviously, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, cryptocurrency has come across your news feed. And I think there's a lot of potential there, both for individual liberties and freedom, but also for corruption. And ethical viewpoints and understanding and debates need to be had about a lot of these technologies that are out there.
That's really interesting. All right, so I'd like to talk to you more about that if you'd come on the show, and we can talk more about that. But for now, we have to run through your candidate profile, and it's interesting to see a liberty-based person coming on and talking about these things from a liberty perspective. And we've had doctors on here, we've had AI metaphysicians coming on here talking about the healthcare industry. Ben Zion is huge on healthcare, so that would be interesting. But anyway, so discuss your background and why you think it would render you an effective president of the United States.
Well, I obviously look at this as an educational endeavor. However, I think that what makes me really qualified for this is a lot of it has to do with my research, my background, and my experience, not just in journalism research, but also in politics. As somebody, maybe the only candidate that's running that has run for a political position as a state assemblyman, I understand what it takes, what's involved, and as well as how different aspects of government work in the inside. But that really comes in handy when it's an educational endeavor, because I understand that through colleges and through education is the biggest opportunity for transhumanism, not only just in colleges, but in the conservative market, because many individuals are fearful of a lot of these ideologies, which really they don't have to be. I mean, who doesn't want to be able to cure any disease just through artificial intelligence that can potentially very near in the near future be able to do something like that? I think the idea here is to bridge the gap, learn how to live free through technology, and not allow it to move into the idea of a dystopian future. We're seeing a lot of that through corporatism, incestual relationships between governments and business, through lobbyism. We can't get a say in the political environment. And I think these are all genuine concerns that the standard individual is worried about. I think that majority of people in the whole United States can agree with the ideology of libertarianism. That's mind your own business, don't violate anyone else's individual liberties and freedoms, and honor your contracts. I'm not calling for no government. I'm saying there's still definitely a use there. But at the same time, I think that we can do a better job of steering the ship away from things like fully automated luxury communism and things like that are being discussed in think tanks that really consolidate wealth in the end game. They have a beautiful ideology, but at the end, there's always some corrupt leader, some individual there that will abuse that for personal gain or wealth or power.
And you've got here a few different points. You've got welfare relief through charitable organizations, increased tax breaks for those who donate, elimination of state and federal income tax, elimination of victimless crimes, free market economy, and full audit of the Federal Reserve. You want to expand on any of those points?
Well, those are all things I worked for in 2012 as a GOP. I sat on the platform committee here in Wisconsin, and those are things I injected and were passed in majority for the platform of the Republican Party. A lot of the ideologies there are libertarian and centric. For example, before we had a Medicaid or Medicare system, we had a very prominent charitable hospital system, much of it run by, let's say, religious organizations. And many doctors would, in order for them to be a doctor, they would donate a third of their service to these type of places and allow people who couldn't afford to have health care or couldn't afford to get the healthcare and attention that they deserved to be able to do so in a very effective manner, which didn't put a burden on the taxpayer dollar.
All right. So what do you consider to be the most important aspects of transhumanism and the kinds of impacts it should have upon the world? So part one, what do you consider to be the most important aspects of transhumanism?
Well, obviously, I think ethics is very important. Is what we're doing ethical? A lot of times when it comes to pioneering new technology, the idea of the juice being worth the squeeze is okay to be a little bit unethical if at the end game it does a whole lot of good. And these are the type of conversations that we need to be having. And this is where I feel that a lot of times the progressive liberal ideology behind transhumanism, it needs to slow down a little. I think that we need to be able to stop and have a debate before we progress in things. Look at things like animal-human hybrids, although there's some great medical benefits, but how is that going to be influence, or how will that be influencing things like designer babies in the future? Life expectancy being edited into your DNA, RFID being edited in your DNA printers. There's things already in the news recently. People were talking about cloning. Obviously, these are all real ethical conversations that nobody wants to have, and I'm not afraid to have them. I think that transhumanism has a lot of great things to offer, and we should take advantage of them. But at the same time, we need to have conversations about what we are doing and what's our respect for life and humanity at this point.
All right, and so you've also got education and technology, and what kind of impacts should it should have upon the world? What kind of impacts do these have upon the world?
Well, obviously, education is where we get a chance to actually introduce a lot of this technology to children, to students, to middle schoolers, then high schoolers and college students as they progress. And some of them go to post-college studies to further their education, whether it's in business or technology. But I think that educating the schools on topics like transhumanism is very important, for the fact that it will introduce a young group of individuals, a young group of children, to be able to get hands-on experience, whether it's robotics, preparing them for future careers and jobs. I think that educating the youth both on ethical concerns, maybe we'll all have robots in our home in about 20 years. Maybe they'll be as prevalent as iPods or iPads or iPhones. And will robots spy on you? Will robot report you? We're already hearing stories of things like Alexa communicating with the police. These are real questions. And is it a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights, somebody warrantlessly tapping you without a warrant and reporting information? Not saying that if your life's in danger, I wouldn't want Alexa to call for me if I said, Alexa, call the police. But how does it hold up in court, I guess? I mean, there's all these different aspects of transhumanism, and it's such a big umbrella, but ethics is by far the most important topic. Not only that, after that is like bringing people back to life. Is how ethical is that practice going to be? Are we going to have some kind of zombie type, response? Didn't other organizations in the 1930s and 40s try this? I don't know. It's scary. It's interesting. We need to have the debate.
Very, very interesting response. I like it. What are the areas of the Transhumanist Party platform that you identify most strongly with?
Well, I think the idea of having liberty and freedom through technology really is important. The ideas of advancing in life extension, the ability to give this to everyone. There's a lot of concern out there that there's going to be a breakaway society of people who are financially wealthy who will be able to live long, long lives, as where people who do not have the ability or access to such great technology will not have that same ability to live 300, 400, or 500 years old. And if you think I'm crazy, Google has already announced that it's potentially possible that people at this very moment will live to be 500 years old. Whether it's true or not, I guess we'll see. Only time will tell. But I think that it's a great thing. I mean, if I had the ability to live longer, specifically organically, even sometimes mechanically, I would definitely pursue this. But the question then comes to the ethical concern of what happens to the soul, and at what part do you become, a robot versus a human, So, and that's getting into the whole fringe aspect of that. Those great philosophical debates, they need to be had. But I think when it comes down to having conversations with the general public, we need to keep it relevant to things that can affect them to our today, the things that we can do to change their lives today, as where this will allow them to really get hands-on understanding and become comfortable for a lot of the things that transhumanism has to offer. So,
what are, in your view, some of the major problems in contemporary American society, and how can transhumanism aid in resolving those problems? So, part one, what are some of the major problems in American contemporary society?
Well, obviously, censorship is a big deal, and so is metadata collection. There's a lot of things that are going on with our entire society. Um, Healthcare is a big issue. I think these are all things that we can directly impact and very shortly. I think these are things that we really need to focus on: education, educating our youth to be ready for a very technologically advanced future, and have them ready and prepared to enter the workforce, because I don't think it's all doom and gloom when we're talking about jobs. You take a look at these things throughout history. A lot of times when there's advancements, people think, oh, hey, they're going to lose jobs. There's going to be no work because of this or automation. Look at things like, car plants. They have a lot of robots in them that help build a lot of the machines, but a lot of those individuals that are there, they fix those robots. We need people to be able to do things like repair robots, monitor them, as well as, I think, things like metadata collection. I don't think companies should be able to just collect it on you. I think that it's a capitalist society, and then maybe they give you an option that they pay you for your metadata instead of you giving it to them for free. Because when it comes down to it, the future majority of the currency is going to come down to metadata, because it's going to help companies predict things. And we're coming down to predicting the future and other information. Metadata is the most important thing to add to the overall equation there. So,
any other problems, mass shootings or climate issues or the degradation of, civil liberty? Any other problems that you see in major contemporary American society?
Well, there's a lot of issues. I mean, I could spend all day talking about the issues of our society. Obviously, with major shootings, there's interesting viewpoints on whether we should have gun bans or not. And I've always believed that a well-armed society is a very polite society. I think that maintaining your Second Amendment right is very important. It also helps protect us from harm. If you have to dial 911, the cops probably aren't going to be there for 2 to 3 hours. You better hope that you have a gun if somebody's breaking in your house. It's just the way we look at it. Now, I know that there's mass shootings going on, and I think the biggest thing that's not really being talked about with the mass shootings is the common denominator, the big elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about. You know what that is, Steele?
Biometrics?
No, SSRIs.
Oh, right. Okay.
Almost every mass shooter is on SSRIs. And not only that, you did mention biometrics. Obviously, facial recognition is being used to help identify these individuals. But again, when we're talking about biometrics, I do believe that a warrant should be required in order to search a database. And how long can they hold that information for? And how accurate is things like biometrics, So.
And how can transhumanism aid in resolving these problems that you metadata, especially that you brought up and are passionate about?
Well, obviously, when we're talking about technology, cloaking technology is already out there to allow people to speak in private on cell phones and cellular devices, as well as internet metadata collection. Maybe even things like smart meters could be equipped with a cloaking device to allow everyone to have their privacy and just give information that is necessary to charge you on your bill. They don't need to know when your refrigerator is on or off, or when you do laundry per se, but they need to know how to charge you. So that's very important when it comes to things like healthcare. I think automation is a big thing. We're talking about everything from holographic x-rays to robot doctors. They actually have robot doctors that will perform surgeries and do things like diagnosing you. I think that's a huge potential benefit of transhumanism. I think the ability to improve people's lives through prosthetics and cyborg technology, where they're able to regain use of a limb that they once didn't have due to either, they were born that way or injury. I think that's a great opportunity for transhumanism to really bridge the gap with the public of understanding of the benefits of technology. I think things like there's so many uses we could talk about. Obviously surveillance is a big thing for me. I'm very anti-surveillance state. The surveillance state and metadata collection, citizen rankings. I think that it's beneficial in identifying, again, criminals, but at the same time, I think there should be a warrant in order to do such things. They shouldn't just have everyone having citizen rankings, and not everyone shouldn't, be getting surveilled at all times. It's, again, an encroachment of our Constitution and freedoms and liberties. And I believe that's one of the questions you're going to ask me about in a few minutes, is how legitimate is the Constitution, still, per se. So.
Very interesting, very Haywire-esque with the anti-surveillance state of China. She's anti that, so that'll be a good one to talk to you both about. In your view, what aspects of contemporary American politics work well, and what aspects of contemporary American politics are broken and or malfunctioning?
Well, just real quick on that last subject you mentioned, I think China denied millions of people their right to flight because they didn't have the appropriate citizen ranking. Just saying that's where it might go, since so many people want to say, China's such a great thing. But back to this topic here. The question, what was it again?
That's okay. So we're talking about China's social credit system. Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. But in your view, what aspects of contemporary American politics works well, and in what aspects of American contemporary politics are broken and or malfunctioning? So what works well in American politics? Is it democracy or something? And what's broken? College, what is broken?
Well, I think first of all, the only thing that really works well in contemporary government and politics is lobbyism, for the most part. Other than that, I think that everything else is very wasteful in many aspects. There's many beneficial roads we can take, and I think that transhumanism can alleviate that. But when it comes to lobbyism and big companies being incestuously involved with government, that we need to talk about how we can change that, how we can get businesses out of lobbyism and more of what the people and the individuals want, instead of a corporatist government that we see today. It's very obvious that majority of politicians share a lot of the same lobbyists. So what's the difference between Republicans and Democrats if they're getting funded by the same people? And that's a legitimate concerning question, and it's sad it has to come to that. But I think that that's the biggest thing. That's how you get things done in Washington, and we need to really talk about getting rid of it. And this way, we'll all have have a more effective voice per se in Washington. So.
Interesting. What aspects of contemporary American politics are broken and or malfunctioning?
Well, I think that just about every aspect of government could use improvement in many different ways, whether we're talking about 80% of welfare going to overhead, or, things like education, where, we look at children with this Common Core curriculum, and it's like we want to try to cookie cut them all in the same educational scales. But I could probably dare say that every state needs to be handled differently from each other state, as well as every community versus city and school, and even dare say every child needs to be handled differently from each and another child as far as education. And we can't just cookie cut them. And I think by giving power back more to the states and their local communities to decide what curriculum best works to educate their children and get the best results should be left to those local communities, instead of having something that came out of something like the Council on Foreign Relations, who has this idea that they can just, have everyone plugged in metadata, collect your kids, and decide maybe in the future that, we'll give you a free scholarship, but it's for these 20 things. And if you don't want to do one of these 20 items on this list, you're going to have to pay your own way in college, and kind of try to steer them to that more of a, let's say, fully automated luxury communist agenda. And that's what, in my opinion, Common Core is right now and is becoming. It's not really about the best education system, but it's more of control over what kind of future we have. So,
if elected President of the United States, what policy measures would you pursue?
Well, obviously, I think that when we're talking about budget and finance, one of the biggest issues is the United States policing the world. We could do a lot less of that and mind our own business and bring majority of our troops home. Almost half of our United States budget is spent on interfering or being involved in other people's business. How about we just bring home those troops and use them here to enforce the laws we have, not in a way like as far as like, border issues and drug cartels and things of that nature versus, getting involved in everyone else's business. They can literally, save about half the budget if they just, brought home the troops. So I think that's what it comes down to. Obviously, there's foreign relations. I'm a non-interventionalist when it comes to this. I don't think that we should be really giving other nations money just for nation building. Obviously, I think through trade and diplomacy that we can work something that's mutually beneficial. I do think as a nation we should be charitable, though, but I don't think we should be going around blowing up places and then paying for the repair. I don't think we should have blown many of those places up in the first place. Obviously, weapons of mass destruction, that was a fallacy. Now we're finding out things like, the money behind other devastating events wasn't where we thought it was coming from. So, that's the first big thing I think is very important. Also, I think freedom of speech is very important. I think giving everyone the right to have their own opinion, their own individual opinion is very important. And I think that censorship is very important to battle. But I do understand as far as censorship for different age brackets. Geez, if I was able to access some of the information now that kids are able to when I was a kid, I don't know where my mind would be at. So we should talk about, obviously different ethical ideologies behind censorship.
Interesting. If elected president of the United States, what changes do you hope to achieve during your first term in office?
Well, obviously, I think that if I was elected for the presidential candidate of the Transhumanist Party, I believe as an educational endeavor, I would definitely go to different colleges. I'd work on educating and going and communicating with them the benefits of transhumanism, having debates of ethical concerns, because obviously not everyone has the know-all and has the main brain. There's a collective community of individuals where everyone can literally contribute, and we shouldn't deny the brightest minds, the college students, of that ability to contribute their ideas of ethical concerns, of abilities of advancement, what's good and what's not. I think that having conversations with Silicon Valley's elite on things like ethical concerns is very important. And those are the things I would like to contribute, is being able to have those debates and a lot of them, the elephants in the room that nobody wants to talk about. So
I'll mention something at the end. What are your thoughts on the U.S. Constitution and its relevance and implications in the transhuman era? So, U.S. Constitution and its relevance and implications on the transhuman era.
Well, I don't think there's really a whole lot of issues with it being compatible with transhumanism. I think the Constitution is a very relevant piece of paperwork. And if there's things we don't like about the Constitution, we should lobby as individuals, our local communities, our Congress, our Senate, to get those changed. We shouldn't just ignore rules in our Constitution. For example, the Fourth Amendment Act. If there wasn't a Patriot Act and they called it the Repeal Fourth Amendment Act, nobody would have voted for it. But it sounds very patriotic to, be safe and get surveillance, I guess. And that's kind of what it comes down to, is the Constitution is very relevant. The problem is do we obey it and do we honor what it is saying? Things like, let's say, the 10th Amendment. But how does it affect transhumanism? I think that when we start talking about things like animal-human hybrids, I think that when we start talking about things like metadata collection, I think that when we start talking about different things like creating clones and new life, we need to take a look at what is within the Constitution, what it was, and what is not, and what we consider ethical. I mean, is it a good thing to do? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And are transhumanism and the current U.S. Constitution compatible?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, interesting. A transhumanist campaign for president is primarily an education endeavor. What are the key insights about which you would like to educate the public during your campaign, and how would you like to educate them? I think you touched on this a little bit before.
I think we covered a lot about this, but I said education. So I think that the other ways I could bridge the gap, I think, is through kind of bringing unison and unity between many different ideologies. I have, as a person who's been a journalist and even a researcher, reached and conversated with many people who have very different viewpoints than my own. I think that everyone has the ability to contribute, and not everyone always believes the same thing for a long time either. I think as an individual that's always improving their beliefs and always improving their ideologies and different viewpoints through research, I think it's really important that overall that we improve ourselves and do research and improve our goals and things in life. It's very important to, I would say, when it comes down to it, that transhumanism is about finding a way to take technology and make our lives better. But when that tool is no longer used to make our lives better, we need to have a debate about how we can make our lives less stressful using technology, whether it's through health concerns, whether it's through war, whether it's through predicting different things. There's so many different aspects of transhumanism that needs to be conversated about. So ethics is obviously the most important, but obviously there's so many different umbrella technologies that are underneath it. Weather modification, we could go into that. There's benefits. So we could actually take the desert and make it so we could plant more vegetation, increase the oxygen in the atmosphere. There's all these different benefits of transhumanism we need to bring to the public as well as concerns. So I guess that's my main point. I have the ability to reach a lot of people, and I have a lot of experience with dealing with politicians, dealing with the media, and I think that'd make a good figurehead, and I try to represent as many of the transhumanists out there as I can.
Given that a president would need to act on behalf of the interests of the entire population, with regards to members of the public who are either not transhumanists or maybe implicit transhumanists, what would make you an effective candidate appealing to them and representing their interests?
Could you repeat that question again? You cut out for a second.
Yeah, given that a president would need to act on the interests of the entire population with regard to members of the public who either are explicitly transhumanists or implicitly transhumanists, so people who go to the doctors, people who get pacemakers and they don't know that that's transhuman or whatever, what would make you an effective candidate for appealing and representing to their interests? So how would you lead on how would you impact the whole of the population, not just the concerns of the small minority of actual transhumanists?
Well, I think that comes down to bringing a message that's very understandable and that's really hands-on based. I think when we talk about technology, it's really easy to play the whole what if game. What if we live to be 500 years old, and really showing the general population of individuals how technology can really benefit their life with things like pacemakers, like you mentioned. How are those advancing? When it comes to aesthetic limbs, how are those advancing? When really relating the things that we can affect today, instead of really trying to push this idea, hey, you're going to be able to live forever, which is definitely feasible in the near future. But let's talk about what is really tangible and what we can do today to really impact the local communities. I think through charitable organizations, maybe prosthetic limbs, things like that. I know that there was some talk in the transhumanist groups about this. I think it's a great idea. I think there's many different ways we can bridge that gap, but I think that bringing an understanding that, transhumanism, although there's debates about putting things like RFID and life limits into designer babies, that's a debate that's yet to be had. People need to get involved, and that you have to educate yourself, because this is our children's future we're leaving them. So we want to make sure that we leave them the best future with the best opportunity. And I think that doesn't happen unless we find a way to bridge the gap between those who are very scared of transhumanism per se, and those who are very aggressive, who really want to provide this world, so that we can slow down and have a good conversation on the ethics of it.
All right. So my question to you is, how do you marry being a conservative and a weird idea like transhumanism? How do you live with yourself?
Well, being a conservative, I wouldn't really say I'm fully a conservative. I'm a libertarian. That's a very different ideology, although they do share many similar ideologies. I also share a lot of ideologies with liberal-minded people. It's the best of both parties, if you ask me. But at the same time, I can understand to the person out there that, conservative and technology, they don't meld. Well, since when being conservative, when does that mean you can't believe in technology? Technology is a tool. Technology can be used for good. It can be used for evil. It can be abused. It can be overly restricted, depending on what it is. Technology is something for everyone, whether it's used for good or bad. That's up to us to decide, and that's why I think it's important that someone like me is involved in this debate. So.
Fantastic. All right. So did you want me to run you through some of these technologies and we talk about the different technologies?
Sure, we can do. I got time. We can do whatever you want. I'm happy to discussions on things.
All right, cool. Yep, no problem. So we'll do that. We'll do that. So artificial intelligence, let's talk about that. What do you think of AI?
Well, again, it's a tool. I think it's both a good thing and a very scary thing if it's not properly regulated. Obviously, I like the idea of artificial intelligence being able to identify diseases and develop a cure at the same, and even create music. I think it's interesting to see, something as simple as that. What will AI come up with? At the same time, I've got concerns about AI. Let's say predicting stock market or predicting outcomes of war or personal decisions. At what point does that become addictive, where somebody becomes fully reliant in their life of what decisions they make, whether it's based off of what something AI is telling them? How about artificial intelligent managers? How is that going to deal with, running a business? These are all real questions we need to have. And I think that there's many great benefits of artificial intelligence. Having an AI robot that, makes my bed or makes me breakfast when I'm not around or mows the lawn. That sounds like a great idea to me. I don't know about you, but a little less work is a great thing when we're talking about artificial intelligence. But having like an idea of something like a beast computer that has all metadata of everything living and almost like an ultimate brain is somewhat frightening to me. And I think that there's any human out there not only would look in awe and go, that's amazing, but would be hesitant on why we are doing this. So,
yeah, and that's going to take a lot of people by surprise if that ever happens. I mean, it's fascinating when you think about this Google brain that could eventually emerge as a super intelligence that would dominate the planet. That's kind of interesting. It's something people couldn't escape, whether or not they were a Luddite or not. Robotics. What do you think of robotics? You like robotics? You afraid of robotics? Going to take a job?
Love and hate robotics. I love the fact that robotics can make your life very much easier, less stressful, maybe even save employers money. At the same time, I'm concerned about artificial intelligence and robotics combined. It's one thing to have a robot that is programmed to do a simple job, and it's another one to give it free will. And I think this debate's has happened before many years ago. Who knows? But I think when it comes to robotics can make your life very beneficial. I mean, look at self-driving cars. It's a great idea, but what if you have a warrant out for your arrest? Does self-driving car take you to the police station? What happens if you're late on your car payment? Does self-driving car just shut off in the middle of the freeway? They're already turning cars off. It's all over. It's been in the news that people are late on loans. They just shut your car off while you're driving. Not even joking. These are real things that are happening right now. Maybe you agree to have AI robot car. Who knows? But when it comes to automation, I think that self-driving cars can be very beneficial. What about weather conditions? If there's a tornado, does self-driving car let me drive or not? I mean, in some aspects, I think that getting in my car and being able to drive is one of the last freedoms I have. I get to go wherever I want. If I'm in a self-driving car, do I have that ability? These are I guess it's a two-side. It's a love-hate relationship when it comes to robotics. I'd love to have a robotic chef cook me dinner. Who wouldn't?
These are fascinating questions, really thought-provoking questions, especially about this sort of not morphological freedom, this location-esque freedom. I mean, humans are motivated by different reasons for doing things, and if the computer doesn't calculate the reasons for you doing something, and it goes on something like you said, a tornado, it might put you in more danger, who knows? I mean, that's really, really interesting. Blockchain. You like blockchain?
Well, yeah, I definitely like blockchain. I think that it's a great technology, and more companies are going to get a lot of benefit off of things like cryptocurrency and the ability to have secure transactions. I think for privacy, it can do wonders, but it also has a lot of opportunity to be controlled and be manipulated. So again, the love-hate relationship. I think it's a great way where we can decentralize ourselves from something like the Federal Reserve, which basically has inflated the U.S. dollar by almost 99% since we left sound currency, and really give people the ability to not be dependent on them and take the power back, per se, if you're a person who's an activist, but at the same time also regain some of that value. Look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's worth more than an ounce of gold. But doomsday happens, gold and silver is the only thing that's going to have value. But, Bitcoin, I think, is the thing of the future. I think that digital currency is a thing of the future. And I believe that this isn't going away. That's for sure.
Virtual, augmented, and mixed reality. You like it? Scared of it? You think people are going to get lost in there and civilization's going to die? What's going to happen?
Well, I think there's great possibilities here, especially, let's say, educational purposes, getting hands-on fields for things like maybe you're studying to be a lawyer or a doctor, or maybe you want to just get a better golf swing. These are all different benefits of things like augmented reality and virtual reality. I think that once we start talking about, melding mind and machine and alternative realities, that's when we're going to have an ethical issue. I think that as far as virtual reality goes and augmented reality, I think they're great, tools, and there's a great market for things like that. For example, something as simple as this, the Samsung Note 10 Plus has the ability to do augmented reality doodle, and it just follows you wherever you walk. You can leave little notes in a Best Buy store or a Radio Shack. Oh, Radio Shack isn't around, but a Walmart in the future, or Real Short, somebody can walk around and see your little augmented reality doodle you left around. There's a lot of fun things coming around the bend as far as augmented reality and virtual reality and gaming. Here comes on the issue of health concerns. Is it healthy for children to be hooked up to these devices all the time? How are they using the device? And that comes down to parenting. I think that's what it comes down to, and I think parents should really be the ones who decide what is best for children and what is not. But at the same time, that we should be knowledgeable of what kind of issues and health issues may come with this. I've been reading articles that there's all sorts of different health issues that can be caused by VR. I don't really know. I don't play VR, but I'm sure that there's going to be something out there where people are so addicted to it that they've made their millions of dollars in their avatar world, but yet in the real world, they're sitting in their couch, barely ever working. So we need to find a way to get individuals more involved and interested in reality, I think, at times too. So.
Yeah, and I remember talking about that. I remember there was an article about some woman in South Korea, and I don't know whether I think she let her son starve because she was playing World of Warcraft or something, because she basically forgot for days on end, a newborn or something. So, you're right. So there are these concerns. 3D printing.
I think, again, 3D printing is a great thing. Having the ability, I was just having this conversation. I went to the store and they're out of the cell phone case I wanted for my phone. And I was thinking, boy, if I just put a 3D printer in here and just paid for a bunch of blueprints, I could just always be have it in stock. The company will always have it in stock, and I can get a custom design and it prints it out right there. I think that there's a lot of great opportunity in business. Again, for new companies and growth through transhumanism and technology and ability to employ a lot of individuals. And that ties in the education piece of what kind of curriculum we're having in schools on, graphic arts and 3D printing. I think that the ability for somebody to print just about anything from home is very interesting. But again, there comes the ethical conversation. What should people be allowed to print and what shouldn't they be allowed to print? What should the government be allowed to print for that matter? I mean, if you got a drone that's flying and it can print out 150 little mini war drones, that's kind of frightening to me. At what point do we want to talk about things like drone warehouses and Amazon and the great benefit of having something delivered within a few minutes? There's all these things, and they got patents for this. I'm not even joking. They have a patent for a drone warehouse that if you're at the Green Bay Packers game, you want that jersey, it will deliver it via drone straight from Drone Warehouse. And that's something that's coming down the corner, and that's right around the road. I think when it comes to 3D printing, it can be a great thing. It's going to make our lives easy. At the same time, how is it going to affect retail?
Yeah, quantum computing. Quantum computing set to take over, storm through computing and to high advanced mathematics, break all those your bank codes. You're not gonna your banking is not going to be secure, but it's going to do higher mathematics. What do you think of quantum computing?
Well, all that sounds like a whole nother reason to buy gold and silver. Just throwing that out there. But quantum computing, I think again, it's a tool. If it's math that can help us solve in further science, I think it's a great tool as long as we respect it and we know what it's doing knowledgeably. At what point does quantum computing start simulating what real life is like and start imitating life? I don't know, but those are conversations I think that are a little bit yet down the road, although it's getting close.
Biotechnology?
Biotechnology and biohacking, very interesting. I think that people should have the ability to do whatever they want to their own body, whether it's biohacking or not. But again, it comes down to the ethical conversation of whether they're doing it because there's more of a inner issue or that they're not happy with themselves, or if it's something that they feel is beneficial. I mean, if you can get USBs plugged into your body as far as biohacking and just charge your iPhone all day, why not? But at the same point, when we're talking about biology and things like nanotech and being able to heal individuals, I think that that's very important. We do focus on that as a beneficial ingredient to transhumanism, and that can really help a lot of individuals. But there's a lot of other concerns when we start talking about things like animal-human hybrids. Everyone's heard the spider goat stories out there, and growing human organs in animals and pumping them with 100% human blood, which it sounds crazy, but that's what they're doing. What's ethical and what's not? So that's what it comes down to. And I think that obviously saving lives is a priority, and if transhumanism can do it ethically, I think that's what we should do.
So I just got an email from Eric Drexler, and he said, please ask about nanotech.
Yeah, nanotech is fascinating. Again, how is it being used? Is nanotech something that can be used again to benefit life? Can it be something that would remove pollution or health benefits, or is it something that could be used potentially down the road to remove us from having freedoms and liberties? Who knows what happens to all the nanotech if you inhale it? What's going to happen with nanotech viruses? And again, ethical concerns. It can be used for really good things or bad, and that's why we have to have these debates. I can't stress that enough time and time again. I think there's a lot of great benefits to nanotech. I think that it's something we should increasingly spend time on doing, because it's a great way to proceed life extension technology and maybe even repair damaged tissues, regenerate tissue, things of that nature. At the same time, I'm a little concerned of what could happen if it is weaponized.
Do you believe that there's going to be the 2029 and 2045 singularities? What's your idea on the singularities?
Singularity sounds a lot much like the Christian rapture or the second coming of Christ or anything else. Again, I try to live in the reality of what we have going on today. Is singularity a concern? Is it a benefit? Are we going to be deep thought from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? I'm not sure. But I do know that we can take precautions to make sure whatever happens with singularity that we can control it, as far as, we're the ones that are programming, so when it comes to merging man and machine and us having the ability of all knowledge and being almost godlike, again, this sounds like a story that was told a long, long time ago. But I think that it's something that we need to be precautionary on. And what happens to individuals that have this ability? Maybe they have all the knowledge, but does that make them all powerful? And what happens if we all plug into this hive mentality? Hive obviously comes from the working bee, and that's another esoteric reference. But is it beneficial? Should we be allowed our individual thoughts? Being able to all share each other's thoughts. What's privacy like? Are we going to have VPN for the brain? It's interesting.
So, do you believe that humans should become a multiplanetary species? Do you like what what Elon Musk is doing, and what Jeff Bezos and Virgin Galactic? Do you like all this sort of stuff? Multiplanetary species?
I think it's a great idea. I think this ideology of doom and gloom and overpopulation and eugenics and everything else is kind of creepy at most aspects of it. But here you have a guy that wants to spread life to another planet and has found an answer. I think that's true progression. And again, we should be precautionary. But I think the idea of colonizing other planets is much better than, churning a population or controlling life. Allow people to live as long as they want, but also allow us to be free and colonize other planets. I think that's a great idea. And it's a great answer to the pseudoscience of eugenics.
And do you think we should go to the moon first, Mars first, or both?
I think that's a good question. I think that corporations are going to probably make the decision for us, unfortunately. I think that there's going to be mining, minerals and things of that nature that can be used from these locations. I think that there's going to be a lot of tourism opportunity for people who have the money. They'll be able to hang out on a space bar and, meet individuals and, have philosophical conversations on the moon. Or Mars. I think both are a great idea, that we should colonize other planets. Who knows how long the sun is going to be around? I think obviously the sun is the #1 contributor of our light and our life, and as well as our climate on this planet. So we should always be planning to evolve and colonize other planets. And if we can do that, we got the technology to do it, I say let's do it. Why not? It's another great way to employ individuals. People are always talking about transhumanism is not going to create jobs. Well, if we have Starship Enterprise out there, we'll have a lot of work and jobs and people and work out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any space policies? Because you seem interested in space. So is there any official space policies or anything like that? Space education, that you want to promote?
Well, I'm interested in all those, conversations as far as technology goes. I find all of it fascinating. I'm not an expert as far as, entering space. I do have some ideologies and concepts on it. I do believe that maybe preparing people education-wise for building products such as spaceships, as far as intergalactic spaceships, buildings in space, learning how to do these things. I think that's a great idea as long as it's feasible and there's a demand for it. Again, it comes down to supply and demand. So if Elon Musk is and other corporations are, and nations for that matter, are planning to go to other planets, why not start with education and educating the youth for a very advanced future and have them prepared? I always felt that, that's the easiest way to do it. So
I've got 3 questions for you left. The first one's fairly easy. Open source. Do you like the open source model?
As far as now we're getting into liberties and freedoms. I like the idea of open source, but at the same time, the question is what is it being used for? As long as people are using it and respecting it, and they're using it for their own benefits and liberties and freedoms, and doesn't violate anyone else's liberties and freedoms, I'd say go ahead. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to always be the case. So again, question is going to be how much regulation versus no regulation. Obviously, as somebody's a libertarian, it's weird to hear me talk about having some regulation, but when we're talking about, open source programming, AI, things of that nature, I think that we need to talk about what is this going to be used for and what's legal and what's not. And people are just doing whatever they want right now. Again, another example how having an ethical debate has not been had, but yet these things are going on. So
the next one is the transhumanist parties. Whoever becomes the nominee will have to face up to the third-party influence of H+ and People Unlimited and all these other external organizations. Do you have a policy of, are you a bridge builder, or are you on board with tearing down that infrastructure, or where do you stand with these third-party organizations, primarily H+, but all the other ones as well that edge around the edge of the party?
Well, I'm a non-interventionalist, so I honestly wouldn't want to get involved in anyone else's individual politics. But if there's a way we can mutually benefit each other and it's something that we're both working on together, I think that should always be an opportunity, as long as we can share ideology or even share philosophical conversation, because like I said, no one tends to have the same idea forever. We all evolve as far as education and show growth in what we believe. Some of the things I believed 10 years ago, I don't believe today, because through research, I've come to learn that some of the things that I once adopted as fact are not really factual. And I think that's part of being an adult and growing as an individual, and as well as a party. I think the Transhumanist Party has a great opportunity of growth, but I think there's a lot of scared individuals as far as what kind of people we let into our party. It reminds me of that old, I grew up in church, and it's like, everyone would be upset because the type of people come to church are the ones that smoke the cigarettes. And it's like, well, what kind of people do you want in there, And not that there's anything wrong with smoking, but like, it's the same idea here. It's, we got to be accepting of everyone. There's going to be opportunity for many individuals, whether it's conservative or liberal ideologies out there, or centric, because there's a majority of people probably agree with more of a centralist ideology. That they get heard and get bridged, gaps get bridged, and that we can put aside differences to make sure that we make a better representation of what transhumanism is. I know that I watched the last two debates, and it seemed to be, in some aspects, a very much continuation of the GOP, or not, excuse me, the Democratic debates and the GOP debates before that. And it's like, wouldn't you want to be an example? Wouldn't you like to show people what people do when they work together and they don't sling mud and try to run an ethical campaign? But as you know, that's not always the case. And that's part of, I guess, getting, what do they call it, where they cleanse you and hang all your dirty laundry out there to dry. So,
Yeah, very interesting. And the final question is aging a disease? Would you classify aging as a disease? Would you push for aging to be classed as a disease? Is it a disease?
Well, it's only a disease if it's curable. I mean, or if there's a potential. I mean, what I'm trying to say is like obviously there's diseases you can't cure. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like, at what point is it a disease, or at what point is it part of our life? So if we can find the cure to aging, I would believe at that point it would be identified as a disease. That's kind of what I was saying. Not that, it doesn't work vice versa. But
that's an interesting response. I like that a lot. We should get Aubrey de Grey on here and have a talk about that, actually, because I know he knows a lot about epigenetics and other things, so that'd be really interesting. Hey, it's Kristan, right?
Yeah, Kristan T. Harris, and KristanTHarris.com should be going up soon, as well as you can find me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I was a journalist, made thousands of videos. I did a lot of research, activism, of everything. And some of it might seem a little out there, but, I'm a person that's thorough in my investigation. And that kind of goes towards, why I'm here, because I want to really educate individuals of the benefits of transhumanism, but yet be able to stir up a ethical debate of what needs to be done about certain aspects of transhumanism that we don't have an answer for yet. So.
Yeah, and it's sort of my motivation as well to launch this show, to start getting that conversation out into the public sphere, to, you know, allow people to know that these transition and changes are coming, whether you're on the right or the left or whatever. These third party changes are going to sweep through your society, and it's not going to look like a society that you're not going to recognize it. You're not going to be prepared for it, and you're going to be wondering what's going to happen. And I think personally, what's going to happen is, you know, those guys, and they sit around and they have, you know, sort of you go into their room and it's the 1950s room, or they're stuck in the 1970s when some big rock star was there, or 1980s or whatever. I think as we go into the future, you're going to get people who are stuck in the 2017s, the 2018s, the 2019s, reflecting on the good old days of 2020, because that curve is going straight up, and they're going to dig their heads more and more into the sand and become more and more reactive. And I think maybe VR will be the only escape that they have, but we're about to change, and I think that, you know, this show and this program and people like yourself, who are big on education, you know, we're doing a public service here that, you know, and it's all happening. So
it's thankless in a lot of matters, but it's imagine I can't disagree with you here. When you think about things like religious aspects and different religious beliefs, how do we dance around scientific technology? You know, obviously there's religious beliefs in the Christianity of RFID and their mark of the beast, and then you got other religious beliefs of technology being evil. I think that a lot of times that a lot of these religious individuals will become the future Amish. You know, if we give them the rights and liberties, which we should, to not partake in RFID if they so choose. Maybe they just get a wristband, or, you know, something they can take on and up. Why does it have to be underneath the skin? You know, I think that these are real conversations as far as ethics needs to be had when it comes to mandating different things. And there are always those individuals who are like, let's just give everyone RFID. But should everyone just have RFID? I think that it should be a choice of the parents and the individuals, and that we should leave it at that. I think that's one of the ways we can bridge the gap when it comes to religious groups and transhumanism.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of them, you know, they're worried about under the skin or whatever, but they'll all have a mobile phone, which is essentially a listening device, tracking device, location device, everything. Monitors your heart if you have an iWatch. I mean, these people, they're worried about it, but they carry it with them everywhere as a tool. So they're like, you know, I don't want that. But you know, it's on your phone. You're literally part of the social credit system anyway. So, you know, it's just
they won't just put it in our DNA when they have designer babies. They'll just have RFID and wirelessly communicate to some kind of computer. You know, so I think the Amish
are the only real people who have a voice on this, because they've actually, you know, but they did GMOs. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's awesome. I agree with you. It's the debate's big, but I like your focus on education. I think that's key. And I like that. I haven't heard that so much, but that's really key, and I thank you for that. And I can't wait to talk to you again. We'll have you on again. You know, we got a whole bunch of Mormon transhumanists as well who talk about morphological freedom. Maybe you'd be interested in coming back on then. You said you were talking about the environment. You've got David Yulishvili, Kate Lovechuck, and others who are big on the Meow Meow as well, who are big on the environment. So we got a whole host of debates and intellectual frameworks and all sorts of things going on here on this platform, and I'd love to hear your voice come in and promote some of these ethical things. You know, Zoltan Itzvan, I asked him, do we need a paradigm shift in ethics and politics and political philosophy? And he said no. He said basically that he agrees with that human nature is inherently good, and therefore we just need to advance technology for technology's sake. I don't agree with that. I agree with you. I think we should be asking questions. I think we should be thinking ethically. I think we should be educating the greater public to get the debate out there and seeing and generating that concern. You know, otherwise it's just, you know, I'll take the technology when it comes, but I don't.
Right? They're already doing it. The laws don't never catch up. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And he did say that, you know, that they're building designer babies in China and America's being left behind because of some, you know, Luddite Republican ideas or something. But
it's like a mandate out there. They're planning, I think, within 20 years to have mandated designer babies. And then the question is going to be, do you think America is going to be like, oh, we're just going to let China have all those perfect young kids that never get fat or sick or old. You know what? We need our own designer babies, of course, and we're going to have cowboy designer babies. You know, that's I'm joking, but
You're not. It's not a joke.
It's conversation right now, and it's crazy.
Yeah. All right. I love it. I'll see you back on the show very soon. But thank you very much. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, just make sure you guys check out KristanTHarris.com. Make sure you guys visit and sign up on the Transhumanist Party. If you're not a member, do sign up. You have to be a member in order to vote in the primary, as well as be a United States citizen to have it qualify for the primary vote. And you can vote for 2 candidates. So maybe you kind of like me and you like somebody maybe a little bit better. And, you know, I don't know, you get to vote for both of us. So that's all fun and part of it. Make sure you guys send me your questions. Reach out to me. I'm available to do as many shows as possible. And I have a busy schedule next 3 weeks. You better believe it.
All right. Thank you very much. Good to see you on board and good to hear a new voice with some new ideas and some fresh input. Thank you very much. Detonation, all welcoming all your way all this week. Make sure if you're a part of the USTP, share this around, like these videos, you know, and like all the Detonation stuff, because that really helps me a lot. So thank you, everybody. And thank you. And we'll see you later. So Detonation.